This is Access Ann Arbor.
Hi, my name is Ralph Harris. My friends call me the military guy, and my enemies, well, I'm not so sure what they call me. Anyway, this is my 9th show about Ann Arbor area veterans who have served in our Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, in various and sundry wars and conflicts. I've done a show on World War II, a couple of them as a matter of fact, show on Korea, show on the Gulf War, show on the Cold War, and tonight's show is about Iraq and Afghanistan. First, though, as I always do, I give a short history lesson for the kids that may be watching so they might understand what they're listening to. The first Gulf War was called Desert Storm. On August the 2nd, 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait. It's a little town on the far away. And the reason they did that is because they wanted to get Kuwait's oil, and they also wanted a better seaport. The United States led a coalition of nations to push Iraq out of Kuwait and back where they came from. So on January 17th, 1991, Desert Storm began. It was a long air phase. That's when the planes fly over and they take out tanks and military convoys and all that kind of stuff. Soften up the battlefield is one of the ways it's described. And so on February the 24th, 1991, we had the ground phase. It was short, sweet, and absolutely devastating. The war ended, the ground phase ended in 100 hours. That's 100 hours, not days. And one of the highlights of that period was called the Highway of Death. That's when the Iraqis decided they better get out of Kuwait because they were getting killed, literally. And so they got into cars, they stole stuff. The highway was littered with civilian cars, tanks, jeeps, whatever, and it was all destroyed. And President Bush said, enough of the killing. So on February 27th, 1991, a ceasefire was signed between Iraq and the United States at the coalition forces. On March 10th, 1991, 540,000 Americans started to come home. Think of that, 540,000 American servicemen were in that theater. The second Gulf War was called the Iraqi Freedom. Saddam Hussein, who was the leader of Iraq, was believed to have WMD, that's weapons of mass destruction. And Western intelligence people all agreed that he had them. He had used them in the past. The French said he had them, the Germans said they had them, the Russians said they had them, the Americans said they had them, everybody said he had them. But unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, we never found it once we got into combat. But there's an interesting part of this. Before the fighting actually began, there were suspicious convoys that went into Syria and to Iran. Many people think that that's where the WMD went, but there's no proof of that. On March 20th, 2004, a coalition led by the United States invaded Iraq. On May 1, 2004, major combat operations ended. But there were a lot of bitter enders that President Bush used to call them. They continued to resist, and there was more fighting for a long time. On August 31, 2010, the war officially ended. Major battles, or some of them, there's Basra, Baghdad, Mosul, Najaf, and Fallujah. Now the Afghan war, that began shortly after 9/11, 2001. If you remember, that's when the Twin Towers in New York came down. That was also the time when an airliner was flown into the Pentagon. The good news is the Taliban government was quickly defeated. However, most al-Qaeda and Taliban fighters escaped. They went into rural areas and they went into very remote mountains, hard to get. Negotiations with Afghanistan failed to get Osama bin Laden turned over. Therefore, on October 7, 2001, enduring freedom began. In 2002, NATO, that's North Atlantic Treaty Organization, assumed command. And their strategy was to clear and hold. That means go into an enemy area, get rid of the bad guys, and hold it for the good guys, for Afghanistan. And nation building, which meant building schools, bridges, and bring Afghanistan up to better nation status. In 2004, Hamid Karzai, the leader right now was elected in a free democratic election. And in May 2011, Navy SEALs killed Osama bin Laden. The Afghan army was formed and trained, and fighting continues today. The major battles of that Afghanistan war would be Mazar-i-Sharif, Kunduz, Tora Bora, Kabul, and Kandahar. And in 2014, which is next year, there should be a drawdown of our coalition troops. Now, enough of history. We have two guests here today, and I'm excited about them because they're good guys. I've talked to them before. They know what they're talking about, and I'm anxious to get to it. Rob, would you introduce yourself and tell us about your family maybe a little bit and what you're doing now?
I'm a former infantryman, National Guardsman, Rob Streeter. I'm married, have 3 children, live in Lenawee County.
You're one of those guys we call boots on the ground, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, boots on the ground.
And Mark, introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Mark Gunner. Originally from New York, and I served in the Army, flying helicopters for 9 years. My last duty assignment was as a company commander in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And from there in 2005, I separated from the military and moved here to Michigan.
And helicopters you used to
Yeah, absolutely. There are
fly
Apache
it?
helicopters. You'll see a print there that was done. That's actually out of Germany where I was stationed before Fort Bragg. And that print is called Whiskey Outbound. And that's a print that was done by a photographer in the area and then transferred to a print that shows one of the checkpoints.
Those were
leave our base.
deadly activities right there, I'll tell you. That and Warthog, the A-10s, they were tank busters and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, they were.
Rob, where's your hometown?
I currently live in Tecumseh, Michigan.
Okay, were you born in Tecumseh?
No, I was born in Owasso, graduated from Perry High School.
Yeah, my wife's family, some of them are from Wausau. I know the town. It's a cool town. And where are you from, Mark?
A small town about an hour north of New York City called Somers, New York. That's where I went to high school.
Wow.
I was born in Queens.
What's it near? A big name, you know.
It's maybe 30 minutes north of White Plains, New York. That's probably a little bit more well known.
Isn't there a big race car goes at White Plains? Something happens in White Plains. I'm barking up the wrong tree. I can tell by the look on your face.
Haven't heard of it.
Okay, and Rob, what was your branch of service? You already said it was Army, but how about units and that kind of thing?
I was in the Michigan National Guard. I was with Echo, 1st of the 125th Infantry. It doesn't exist anymore. It's been switched to Delta 125. But
okay, and how about you, Mark?
In Germany, I was with 11th Aviation Regiment, 66 Cav. We're actually a cavalry unit, so this is one of the headgears that we wear. Cool. I got this in Tombstone, Arizona, with one of the pilots that I went through flight training with. And that was in Germany, and then in Fort Bragg, I was assigned to 229th Aviation Regiment, which reflagged to 82nd, just as I was leaving the unit.
When you talk about Germany, that brings back good memories for me, because I was in Berlin. It was a great place. Even though it was destroyed, it was after World War II. I was on occupation duty, but ich spreche Deutsch, as they say. When did you serve, Rob?
I was in from 1999 to 2011.
And when were you overseas?
I was overseas in Sinai, the first time in 2004.
Wait a minute. The Sinai Peninsula is, I know, but help the audience here.
Sinai Peninsula is located in between Egypt and Israel.
Yeah.
It's
It was a battleground between the Israelis and the Egyptians many times.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's there for the MFO. That's what I was there for, the multinational.
If I'm not mistaken, isn't that where Moses went up on whatever? And
Mount Sinai?
10 Commandments? Yeah.
Yes, yes. I've stood atop Mount Sinai. It's
You
pretty
did?
high, yeah.
Oh my Lord, that is so cool. How about you, Mark?
I was in from 1996 to 2005.
Okay, and whereabouts?
From 96, I went to Fort Rucker, Alabama for flight school. Finished there in 1998 and was assigned to Germany, where basically within a month of getting to Germany, I was sent down to Bosnia for some peacekeeping operations down there.
That was during the Clinton era?
Yeah. Okay. And then came back. It was only a short tour down in Bosnia, about 4 months or so. And then finished out with one more deployment to Kosovo for Task Force Hawk, and that was in 1999. And then spent another year and a half or so in Germany and returned back to Fort Rucker for some training in 2001. And then I was assigned to Fort Bragg.
Cool. And Rob, I can see your rank, but tell the audience what it means, because they don't know.
I'm a Specialist E4.
Specialist E4, okay. And obviously we have an officer amongst us.
Please don't stand up.
Yeah, don't stand up.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, Captain Mark Gunner. And we already went through your units. What were your jobs or duties, Rob, when you were in the combat situations?
I was a gunner. I was a gunner behind a 50 cal M2
On a Humvee?
on a Humvee, and I also was a gunner on a Mark 19.
Okay, describe for the audience what a Humvee is. I know, but they don't. So describe what it looks like. And
Humvee is
a wheeled vehicle.
It's a wheeled vehicle that will go through almost anything.
And you got, okay. And how about the other vehicle?
The,
Humvee, and there was something else.
being infantry, it was either Humvee or
Okay,
feet.
all right,
Leather
whatever.
boots.
And we know what your job would do. You were flying. Go ahead and finish.
Sure. Flying helicopters, AH-64 Apaches, and basically our primary mission was to support our ground friends.
Are
make
the
sure that they were
Apaches
safe.
still the #1 helicopter in the?
Yes, it is. In the U.S. Army, they've upgraded. When I was flying, it was a model. There's a lot more manual things. The D model now has tons of upgrades to it and a lot more electronics and computers operating it. So it's you could say it's better and more complex than the models that I flew.
And Rob, when did you actually go in? When were you sworn in? I solemnly swear on all that.
February 12th, 1999.
You remember that one, don't you?
Never forget it.
And are you still in reserves?
No.
And when did you officially get discharged?
December 11th, 2011.
Cool. And how about you, Mark?
I was sworn in on June 22nd, 1996, and left active duty on May 31st, 2005.
How old were you when you joined up there, Rob?
19.
Me too. I was young and thought, you know how it is when you're 19. You
You're
don't
invincible.
know what the place is going on. And if anybody's in the audience is 19, I'm sorry, but it's okay. It's whatever. How about you, Mark? How old are you?
23.
Oh, you were an old guy. Out of college?
Yep.
That's cool. That's probably why you're an officer. Rob, tell me about some of your missions that you remember. Anything that comes to mind that the audience might be interested in?
Well, we used to go down to a city. It's called Solomon Pak. It's right along the Tigris River in southeast Baghdad. And we used to go through the streets and try and keep the peace, as we called it. There was a lot of firefights and stuff going on down there. So
Firefights is where the good guys are shooting the bad guys and vice versa, right?
well, usually the bad guys would shoot at the good guys first, and then
Yeah.
we'd return fire.
Well, that's called the rules of engagement, right?
Right.
You knew they were going to shoot, but you had to wait till they
You
actually
had to
did
wait.
it.
Yeah, had to wait till you heard it.
Yeah,
So-
World War II, the rules of engagement were a little bit more slack. How about you, Mark?
I remember one mission. We were on a QRF mission, which is a quick reaction force, and basically would sit around all day waiting for something to happen. Hopefully it didn't, and most of the times it did not happen. But when something happened, we needed to be ready to go. And we got a call from a ground convoy that had been attacked and ambushed by some insurgents in Afghanistan. So we quickly ran up the helicopters and went out there and.
Which could have been Rob, because
Very well
Rob
could have been.
would call in you guys.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. So we went out there and we took care of business and pretty much everyone in the U.S. convoy got out okay.
Took care of business, meaning you were shooting up the bad guys
We
pretty bad.
did what we had to do.
Do it, what you do. All right. How about you, Rob? Did you see any enemy combatants up close? I mean, so that you could actually see them, or were they all sort of far away and shooting at them?
I would say up close. Not necessarily reach out and touch them, but I could reach out and touch them with the 50 cal that I had in front
Close
of me.
enough.
Yep,
Yeah, got it. Well, 50 caliber. What's the range on that?
really far. you could clear a mile with it.
Well, yeah, but for the audience, I don't know about them, but I never was in combat, but I don't think I'd want to be within a mile of somebody who was trying to kill me.
No, you're probably not with that. Probably not.
How about you, Mark?
I didn't see anything up close. I mean, in the helicopter, we have the luxury of being a little bit distant from where the battlefield is. So I was fortunate enough not to see anything too up close right in front of me.
That's good. How about you, Rob? Did you think you would survive and come home from all that?
Honestly, when I was there, that was the furthest thing from my mind, because I felt if I sat there and just thought about that, it would just bring me down. So I thought about what my next mission was or what I had to do next.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. And I don't know about you, but I remember when I was 19, I always thought, well, if I ever was in combat, everybody else might die, but not me. You know, if the plane's going to crash, well, I'll jump out just for a crash. It's stupid things, but I mean, you know, whatever. How about you, Mark?
Nothing at the hands of the enemy. I probably tried to kill myself a couple times when I was flying around just from doing silly stuff. But there was one time.
Loops?
Yeah, nothing like that.
Okay,
nothing illegal. So I think we're past the statute of limitations on all that stuff anyway, so we're good. But I did get caught in a dust storm one time, and that was kind of hairy one time. We were flying around, and it looked like the visibility was okay, and then all of a sudden a dust storm kicked up and engulfed the helicopter, and I really couldn't see where we were going. So had to squeak out of that situation.
Yeah, Iraq and Afghanistan are both famous for those dust storms. My God, those things come in, and you can't see anything as far as, I mean, you just can't see. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Every once in a while you see pictures down in Arizona where the dust, it's just a big cloud and comes in, and you're searching around with your hands trying to find the building. Is that true or false?
Can be.
Could it be? And then dust is not good on those helicopter rotors and the engines.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely. Rob, were you wounded or have any close calls? I know we were talking before. I know that you were in a Humvee and that got blown up.
Yep, that was a close call. And then being on our fob, we took 480 impacts of rockets and mortars in the year I was there. The enemy shooting onto our fob.
Wait a minute. What was that word you used?
Fob.
What's a fob?
It's a forward observation base.
Remember, the audience doesn't know that.
It's where soldiers live.
You're out on in the middle of nowhere, which is quiet. It's called a forward observation base, and you're supposed to, they're coming, guys, and only you see them first.
Right.
And you took how many rounds?
There was 480 rockets and mortars that impacted on our fob in the year we were there.
How big's a fob?
It was pretty good size.
But 480, that's a lot. That sounds like it's going to be Vietnam with, what was that airfield there that they were trying to do a Dien Bien Phu on us? Anyway, I can't think of it. Anyway, but I'm glad you're here.
We actually sometimes felt safer outside.
Outside the wire?
Outside on mission than we did on our own fob.
Wow. And tell me about when the Humvee got blown up in the air.
Didn't really get blown up in the air, but we were driving down the road, and it's hard to pick up where an IED is because it's just a little copper wire that you gotta look out for. And you know, somebody detonated it from a long ways away, and it rocked us pretty good. You know, the head hurt a little bit, but that was about it. So I didn't take any shrapnel or anything.
Well, you're a lucky man. So you didn't get a Purple Heart, and that's good.
Right.
I've seen pictures of some of those things, the improvised explosives. They would take artillery rounds, the bad guys, and put some sort of a timer on it or whatever, detonate the doggone thing and bury it in the ground, and all kinds of ways of trying to find them. But I'm glad to see you're here and talking and looking good. How about you, Mark?
Nope, didn't sustain any injuries during my service, so I was very fortunate.
Never had an engine quit you in flight?
No engines quitting. I mean, we did have a precautionary landing in Afghanistan, which was nothing more than a system error that we couldn't continue flying. We had to land the helicopter, which of course, you know, you worry about whether you're going to land on an IED or some landmine or something out there, but you know, we were fortunate it didn't happen. We had a crew come out, take us back in a Black Hawk, and move the helicopter via sling lift on a Chinook.
How about shoulder-fired weapons for the bad guys? Did anything ever get pointed your direction?
You know, the threat was always there. Our intel guys would always talk about that being a possibility, but we had really good training and really good execution of our missions to protect us from putting ourselves in situations where that could happen.
What are the names? There was a name for those shoulder-fired weapons in Afghanistan, even today in Iraq. Oh man, I can't think of it.
The RPG.
RPG
would be the non-guided ones, and then some surface-to-air missiles that might have some heat-seeking capability, but those were not common.
Great. Rob, tell the audience and me about any events that you'll never forget. I mean, it's stuck in your memory, and every once in a while it pops up. Something you saw or something that happened?
Actually, just outside our FOB, our forward observation base in Iraq, was a huge trash pile. The smell that gave off, being in 120-degree heat, I will never forget. Anytime I walk like at a sporting event or whatever, you pass the porta potties, and if it's a hot day, that's the same smell that you could smell on our FOB every day.
Well, and plus, a lot of people don't know, it got really hot in Iraq and Afghanistan. It really get cold, too.
Yes.
They think, well, it never gets cold over there. Bull crap, you get in those mountains, you got snow and ice and all the rest of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Mark?
I'd say one of the things that I will always remember is just how lucky we are to be Americans. I think we do, relative to the rest of the world, have a great place to live, and I think I wish more Americans would show appreciation for what we really have over here and how lucky we are. You know, when we did go out onto the town, the standard of living in some of these places is really poor, and you know, obviously we don't we have our own poverty in this country as well, of course, but it made me appreciate it. And every time I go to a sporting event or to something, or just sit in a nice studio like this to have a chat with friends, I just consider myself lucky that we're Americans. And
I think that's a common denominator. I know when I came back from Germany in the 50s, we came back to what we call the land of curbs and gutters and big cars instead of the little cars. And it's good to come home. You don't know what you missed to get here. Do you agree with that, Rob?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
When did you come home from overseas? What did you feel when you landed wherever it was that you came in at?
We landed at McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey on August 17th, 2007. Then we had to stay there in New Jersey for a week, and then we came back to Michigan.
McGuire is where I left to fly to Europe in '56, and?
Back to Fort Bragg when we came back from Afghanistan. Landed on a C-17.
On a B-17?
C-17.
I'm going to say, a B-17, that's a bomber in
Yeah, right.
World War II.
they just kicked us out the back.
Okay. Either of you, Rob, do you have any feelings about the conflicts that are going on now? In retrospect, you look back, was it stupid, right, wrong, or whatever, or do you even want to talk about it, or what do you think?
I'm here. I try not to think about if it was, honestly, if it was stupid or if we belong there. You know, I went there, I did the job I was asked to do, and I came home.
It's a good soldier's answer, and that's what everybody that I've talked to, Korea, Vietnam, you go, you do what you're supposed to do, and do it the best you can.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Mark?
I'm a soldier first, so I'm going to say the same thing.
We're political here.
Yeah.
I don't make it. Now, we brought some things here. Let's show the audience some of them. What's on the table there, and who brought that? Pick it up, please.
Which one are you pointing at? The break?
Well, I'm looking at the big old round there.
there.
That is
Yeah. This is a dummy round we use for training purposes on a 30 millimeter cannon for the AH-64 Apache. So what the armament guys would do would be to use hundreds of these to practice loading and unloading the helicopter, because you had to go through several safety checks to make sure that the aircraft was also completely unloaded. Another thing they would do is actually they would put a few of these rounds in first, so that way when they were unloading an aircraft, when this round came out, they would know that all the live rounds had already come out before it.
Now,
So,
may I have that?
absolutely.
Now, I want the audience to think. I mean, that's one round. And how many rounds could you fire, say, in a minute?
You gotta test my knowledge here. I think it was 1,200 rounds.
1,200 rounds.
Well, no, I'm sorry, not a minute. The aircraft would hold 1,200 rounds, and I think it was 625 rounds per minute it could fire.
This will tear up some things.
It can do some damage, and there's different types of warheads on it too, so that would
Yeah,
definitely do different things.
that's cool. And your hat. Let's see your hat. Now, tell us about that.
So yeah, so this is a Stetson, commonly worn by the cavalry back in the days of when the cavalry was on horses. And of course, the mission of the cavalry is a scout, to be the eyes and the ears of the commanders on the battlefield. So as technology progressed, it went from horses to tanks to helicopters being scouts, and that was the unit.
And being an old guy that I am, that hat reminds me of the apocalypse now.
Absolutely.
The helicopters flying in and all hell's breaking loose. That was cool. And now you brought some things, Rob. What'd you bring? What's this?
That is a picture of me in front of Air Force One when I was on airport security.
That's the presidential plane.
Yes.
Not a replica. It's Air Force One.
It's not a blow up. It's not a cardboard cutout.
Who was the president at the time?
I believe it was George Bush.
Shame on you. Don't know who the president was, and you were guarding the plane.
I wasn't guarding the plane.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I was at the airport.
I'm just teasing.
The car in front had Secret Service. They were guarding it.
Okay. Okay, that's cool. But that's very nice. Thank you for bringing it.
All right.
And I think we already talked. You got anything behind you there you want to show anybody?
I just brought there's a couple of award certificates.
And we have 2 hats up here too.
The black beret I was issued in 2002 when the Army went to berets, and the orange beret is the one we were issued in Sinai in 2004.
It's funny because when we went to berets and I was in the service, we didn't particularly, actually it happened right after, but I remember, okay, well, I'm not going to wear that thing, and now they're cool, you know, they're really cool. And anyway, either of you have anything else you want to share with the audience? Nope? Cat's got your tongue. I noticed you got a lot of ribbons there, I'll tell you that much. Yeah. Tell everybody that the rifle on your shoulder means that you have to earn that. They just don't give you that.
It's a combat infantry badge. You have to hold the job title of an infantryman. You have to be in combat, be fired on by the enemy, and return fire in order to get it.
Yeah, that's a treasured thing right there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we're about out of time here, and it's nice to have you both here tonight, and hope you enjoyed the interview. And I know the schools and you know, the schools will probably watch this program. I hope so, anyway, because that's why we do them, is let everybody know what's going on. It's one thing to read a history book and say, well, World War II started on December the 4th, 1940, or 7th, 1941. It's another thing to show somebody who was actually there.
Right.
Yeah. And if you had a chance to speak to kids in school, what would you say to them about joining the service, not joining the service, or whatever?
Actually, I did have the honor of introducing and presenting an award to a high school senior who was getting ready to pursue attendance at the United States Military Academy, and he was getting an award to get him on his way for that. And I spoke in front of a high school audience, and one of the things that I did mention was that you know, being a veteran is service to your nation, and that you should just think of that always. For the freedoms that we have here are basically the result of this, of the sacrifices.
And by the way, you didn't mention you are a West Point graduate.
I am.
That is something to be very proud of.
Thanks.
And anyway, I want to thank the 2 of you again because we've run out of time. And to the citizens of Ann Arbor, I hope you've enjoyed this show. I know it's always a treat for me to meet real heroes. They don't want to be called that. I'm sure I've never met any guy on these programs that want to be called a hero, but trust me, they are. Thank you, and God bless you, and support the military.
Thanks, Rob.
You're welcome.